The New York Mets lost Max Scherzer in the middle of his start and still found a way to win their series against the Dodgers. A great performance that we'll be discussing on the show today, but also Scherzer could face a suspension due to the suspected sticky stuff on his glove. We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss this past series, and we're going to look ahead to what the Mets have in store against the Giants this weekend on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, before we get into the main topics of the day, I do want to discuss something that happened over the weekend. The founder of MetsMerageOnline.com, Joe D, passed away, and Joe D meant a lot to me, and he meant a lot to this Mets community. And I just wanted to acknowledge his passing at the top of the show, because I would not be where I am in my career if not for Joe D and Mets Mirage. I started at 19 years old. It's the first place that published any of my work, and went on to be an editor and part of that team. And they taught me, as now I'm working with Just Baseball as an editor, they taught me how to organize a site, how to manage a team, and I made incredible friendships that will last a lifetime during my time at Mets Mirage. So I was really sorry to hear about his passing. He was a great man who absolutely loved the New York Mets and loved Mets fans. That was the big thing about Mets Mirage. He really did cater to Mets fans with the work that they put out, and his legacy lives on in that website. So seriously, if you have not heard of MetsMerageOnline.com, I strongly encourage you to check out what they got going on, because it is the most comprehensive coverage you're going to find in written form on the Mets. Every single day, they're pumping out a ton of great content. So I just want to mention them at the top of the show today, and rest in peace to a incredible Mets fan and a great man, Joe DiCaro. So anyway, let's now move towards what Joe loved the most, which is Mets baseball, and he would have been up in arms about what happened to Max Scherzer on Wednesday here. He was not cruising by any stretch of the imagination, but he navigated a lot of traffic early. The first inning was ugly for Scherzer. Gave him a base hit, got a pop out of Freddie Freeman, but then walked a couple to load the bases, and you're sitting here thinking, is this going to be another bad start for Scherzer? Gets a big strikeout, gets a ground out, gets through that jam. Second inning, righted the ship a little bit, 1-2-3. Then, in the third, or I guess it was going into the third, there was a check of his glove, and they asked him to go put a new glove on because of suspected sticky substance going on here, right? Goes out, pitches again in the third inning, 1-2-3. Awesome. He is now, doing a good job. He's got himself in a good place. The Mets might actually get some length from their starting pitching, which they haven't gotten in some time. So they needed him, right? Fourth inning rolls around. Still no score from the Mets. What happens? Max Scherzer is ejected because of this suspected sticky substance. And I'm going to discuss that at length in the next segment, but Scherzer was not happy. And honestly, this seems like a complete just personal gripe from Phil Cuzzi, who, by the way, is the only guy who's ever found a sticky substance where they have ejected someone in a game. It's happened 3 times since they have enacted these rules, all by the same umpire. That's got to tell you something, and it sucks for the Mets, because not only do they lose their best pitcher in this game and force the bullpen to do a lot of heavy lifting, but they could lose Scherzer even longer. So a rough outcome there, but the Mets found a way to battle back. Even though, you had Jimmy Yacobonis come in and he gave up a run in that fourth inning. He was great, man. He gave the Mets length, and they needed it. And Brandon Nimmo got the Mets up. Francisco Alvarez, top of the fifth, got a hit, so he was on base. And Nimmo hit his first home run of the season. He was unbelievable in this game. 5 for 5, Brandon Nimmo. Just outstanding stuff for him. He is red hot right now. The average on the season now for Brandon Nimmo is up to 349. Scored 2 runs in this game. The 2 runs driven in, of course, on the homer. You look at his OPS right now, it's 957. On base percentage, 481. He is playing like an all-star, and the Mets need him right now. I mean, you're looking at this team, and the top 3 players, I think, up to this point have been the 2 guys you expect with Lindor and Alonso. And Lindor is still kind of waiting to get completely going offensively, but defensively he's been exceptional. And Alonso's just carried the team with all the home runs. Nimmo has been as good as anyone. And Starling Marte has actually hit a little bit of a skid, hit into a couple of double play balls today. But Nimmo at the top of this lineup is as good as it gets right now. So that was when the Mets took a lead, and they held it. You look at kind of the way they were able to scrap together this game when it comes to the pitching front. You only get the 3 from Scherzer, obviously, so that really put the bullpen in a bad place. But Jimmy Yacobonis gets his second win of the season. He's 2-0, goes 2 2/3, 2 hits allowed, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. Jeff Brigham got out of a little bit of trouble for him to close out what was the 6th inning. Drew Smith goes on for the 7th. He was 1-2-3 with the strikeout. David Robertson had to go through the teeth of the Dodgers order in the 8th, and he did give up a run, as did Adam Ottavino in the 9th, but he still picked up a save because the Mets were able to score late, right? They got the 2-1 lead off the back of the Nimmo homer. Then you get to the top of the 8th inning. The Mets were able to scratch yet another run. Francisco Lindor ended up leading the inning off with a double, his 7th of the year. Pete Alonso got a base hit that moved Lindor over to third. After Jeff McNeil popped out, Tommy Pham came on to pinch hit for Vogelback, and he got a sacrifice fly. Pham has continued to be great this season. So I was dead wrong on him. We'll see if it continues, but he's been a great asset to this lineup. Now, as I mentioned, you had Robertson give up a run in the bottom half. JD Martinez had a great series, RBI double to drive in Freddie Freeman, but Robertson able to navigate it, get through that inning. He walked Max Muncy, or they intentionally walked Max Muncy, got around Jason Hayward, Miguel Vargas to get the Mets to the 9th, and then thanks to Mark Canha, who is actually starting to swing a hot bat a little bit. We're seeing some really strong at-bats from him. There's 2 runners on. You had Guillorme walk and Nimmo get a base hit, so that put some traffic there for Canha, and he cleans it up with an RBI double that scored both. Nimmo scoring from first base on that play. Just another moment where we see him stand out. As I mentioned, Adam Ottavino gave up a run in the 9th. It was a solo homer from David Peralta, but the Mets, no worse for wear, win the game 5-3. So incredible resilience to win one when the circumstances were against them. But moving forward, this is still something that we have to monitor, because the Mets could lose Scherzer for 10 games, and that would be a disaster. I want to discuss the implications of that in just a minute when it comes to the sticky substance ejection, because this is a bad place the Mets are in. Before we get to it, though, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Something exciting is coming to Built.com on April 22nd. Don't have all the details yet, but you want to stay tuned, because this is something that Built fans are going to love. If you know how they work, this is the most incredible protein bar you're going to find, with incredible flavor drops, hint, hint, with unreal flavors in limited quantity. That's the key word there, limited quantity. So April 22nd, something's coming to Built.com. You're going to make sure you're staying tuned. Mark your calendar, and also, of course, make sure use the promo code LOCKEDON15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Built.com, you can get a mixed box, try all the different flavors, and you might want to check Saturday, April 22nd. All right, so the Mets are in a really bad spot with Max Scherzer here, okay? Basically, if you are ejected from a game due to a sticky substance, it's an automatic 10-game suspension. That is how the rule works in Major League Baseball. This is how they counteracted it. But let's go back and let's discuss this whole thing, because Max Scherzer is always vocal, and I'm buying his story. I'm not going to look at Phil Cuzzy saying there is significantly more sticky stuff than we have ever seen, and this is the same guy, again, that ejected the other 2 players, or other 2 pitchers who have seen an ejection due to sticky substance. It all goes back to him. Now, the one thing I will say, those suspensions were upheld. So the Mets are in a bad place, but if you believe Max Scherzer's account of the situation, he said he went into the dugout after that inning, he washed everything off, went back out, pitched. again, with an MLB official washed off everything and reapplied the rosin, which is an approved substance, in front of an MLB official, yet Phil Cuzzi puts it in his own hands again and ejects him. So you have a he said, whatever you want to call it, between these guys, and you just don't know what's going to hold up. It now becomes a legal matter. The Mets are going to appeal. Max Scherzer is going to be able to point to the fact that, hey, I was in front of an MLB official when I put the substance on. He says, I would be stupid to have done anything else after already getting flagged. He even, swore on his kids that this was not something he did. I fully believe Max Scherzer, and I don't believe just a complete biased opinion. It's based on what he said. It's based on the track record of Phil Cuzzi. But some of those suspensions were upheld again, so we just don't know what's going to happen in this instance. There's a chance that they could just go by umpire discretion, and you lose Max Scherzer for a couple of starts. That's devastating to this team. And I just don't know what exactly is going to happen here. But it's pretty frustrating that, for one, you've already been put in a bad spot because this bullpen was already taxed. All of a sudden, instead of potentially getting 6 innings from Max Scherzer, you get 3. So that's already punishing a team. Are you going to punish a team further? And the other thing, too, that one of the reporters noted when they were talking to Scherzer, the spin rates were identical. This is not a Joe Musgrove sticky ear situation from the playoffs where obviously we could say that was maybe more adrenaline-based than anything else, but there was a lot more evidence there based on a spike in spin rate than Max Scherzer, whose spin rates were basically in line with what he's done all season. So I would hope that whoever the arbiter is in this instance, they're going to look at Scherzer's account. They're going to look at the data that's in place. They're going to talk to the MLB official who Scherzer applied the rosin right in front of. And they're going to say Phil Cuzzi's an idiot. That's what I hope happens. But you never know here. You never know what's going to happen. And if the Mets suddenly lose Scherzer, man, you are in a bad place because guess what? Carlos Carrasco, he's not coming back anytime soon. They found he had a bone spur in his elbow, something that he had 18 months ago. So now here you are again in a position where we'll see if Carrasco can be the best version of himself. Unfortunately, you acquired this pitcher in the Lindor trade and thought you were going to get 3 years of decent production, and he gave you a good season, and that might be all you got in 2022. So, if you lose Carrasco, Verlander probably not back until some point early in May. You got to get through this next month. Are we going to get to a point where the rotation is Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Tyler McGill, Jose Budo, and Joey Lucchesi? That could be where we're heading towards. And that's just not the position you expected the Mets to be in this year. So, again, we'll see. More is going to come out on this one. The Mets better hope that Max Scherzer is available to go out and make his next start. It has not been the season that Scherzer would have liked. He had some bad results. Finally, looked like he was starting to turn a little bit of a corner. This was a great beginning of his start where he ran into trouble. He navigated through it, and he retired, 6 in a row before he gets out of that game. And it's just a shame that he doesn't get to finish that start and build off of it. But, the bigger concern at this point is that you lose him for 10 games and you are just begging and pleading for 5 from most of your starters. And then you're tasking that bullpen even more as you're trying to get through this season right now. And let's not forget, too, you'd like to have Max Scherzer available when you face the Braves next weekend. That would be ideal. You got this series against the Giants that we're about to discuss here, 4-game set. You got the Nationals. There's a day off that you can rest up a bit. So hopefully you can get through it. You can get some length from your rotation against the Nationals and maybe even the Giants in this upcoming series. And you can be as rested as possible for that series against the Braves. But no Scherzer is no Scherzer. So we'll see, again, what happens next here. Before we get into a series preview, though, Mets, Giants, want to tell you about eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit or your money back. Because just like sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. So the Mets face the San Francisco Giants, a 4-game set that begins Thursday night, 9:45 Eastern time. Kodai Senga's on the hill. You gotta tune into that appointment television anytime Senga takes the hill with that ghost fork that's striking out the world right now, and I think he's going to be able to pile up a lot of strikeouts against this Giants team that typically fares maybe a little bit better against left-handed pitching. You got the righty Senga on the mound. You got a pretty good ballpark to pitch in. I love Senga in this matchup, and on the other side, Sean Manaea goes for the Giants, which puts me into this position where I am campaigning, please let Francisco Alvarez play in this game. Now, I imagine Tomas Nido catches because, for one, Alvarez just caught. Two, Nido has caught every single one of Senga starts, so I think they're going to stick with that. And Tommy Pham has been great this year, so I'm not saying don't have Pham in the game, but let's try to find a way to get Alvarez to DH. So if that means you got to give Canna a blow, maybe you give Canna a blow and put Pham in left. I really want to see Alvarez in this matchup because a soft tossing lefty is barbecue chicken for him, and this is a guy that needs a confidence boost. You look at, the other games this series, it's Anthony DeSclafani pitching on Friday and Logan Webb on Saturday. We don't know who's going to pitch on Sunday yet, so a couple of righties. I would love to see Alvarez get into this game, and I do think there is something to be said about maybe a confidence boost of giving him a nod as a DH. Problem, though, is they're going to probably start Nido at catcher, and I don't know if Buck is the type to roll the dice and to, put both of his catchers into a starting lineup when you don't have a third catcher available. That's the other aspect of this. But hey, Louis Guillorme could catch in an emergency. Do it, Buck, do it. If not that, though, I imagine you're going to see kind of the typical cast of characters. Probably, either Marte, Canna, or Pham DHs with all those guys in the lineup with Nimmo. And then, your typical infield across the board. I do wonder if they're going to go Escobar or Beatty. I think this is a matchup that Beatty could succeed in, but also if you're looking at a couple righties throughout the weekend, you want to give Escobar a start. I would not be surprised either if you threw Escobar out there. And honestly, it is a good matchup for him. Now, when it comes to Friday night, it's, again, Anthony DeSclafani, who's off to a great start this year, 1.42 ERA. TBD for the Mets. We don't know his pitching. Imagine Joey Lucchesi is probably the guy unless they go to Jose Buda, but Lucchesi was apparently scratched. So I think that's probably the direction the Mets are going to go to here. And if this is more of an extended time, maybe you want to kind of let Lucchesi, the MLB veteran, have a spot in the rotation for a little bit. And unfortunately, that could be the case again with the Mets in a bad position here when it comes to potentially losing Scherzer. You look at the best player on the Giants right now. Who is leading the team? None other than Michael Conforto, 377 on base percentage. Got the slug at 512, 4 home runs. He's doing great. You know who else is doing great? JD Davis, 4 home runs for him. He's hitting 333 this year, 373 on base, 593 slug. Maybe I was wrong about JD. I don't know. I don't think it ever would happen in a Mets uniform, but regardless, you're going to see a lot of familiar faces in that Giants lineup. Conforto, Davis, Wilmer Flores, Darren Ruff is out there, so that's going to be extraordinarily frustrating, I imagine, as those guys might get off to a great series against the Mets, and we'll all be doing the whole game of, I can't believe that they let X, Y, and Z go, even though none of them really would have worked in a Mets uniform, other than Conforto. I was campaigning for Conforto this offseason. Still believe that would have been a nice addition for the Mets. Now we go to Saturday. David Peterson will take the hill against Logan Webb. Webb on the heels of a fresh contract extension, so imagine he's going to be ready to show up and show out in front of that San Francisco home crowd. Peterson, he needs to step up. He has not had a great season up to this point, and it's about time for him to settle a little bit. And then you got McGill going on Sunday against, well, we'll find out later this weekend. We're not sure where the Giants will go. It's important to win this Angus start. I think that's very clear. But look, this is a Giants team that, despite some good numbers from some of their offensive players, they're 6-11 on the season. So go into San Francisco, take at least 2, and it's still a successful road trip, I think, to have 1-2 in the series and to end up with, what would that be? I guess that would be, they're already 4-2, so that'd make it a 6-4 West Coast swing. That would be acceptable, but the Braves are winning every day, so if you want to keep pace, win this series as well. You got a day off, beat up on the Nationals, and then we'll have that big grudge match to look forward to at the end of next week. As always, though, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. For all you everydayers out there, tomorrow's show going to be a really good one. Of course, I'll be breaking down the game, but I'm also working on a piece about Pete Alonso and his impending free agency in a couple of years, and how a hungry Pete Alonso is someone that could threaten to hit 60-plus home runs this year the same way that Aaron Judge did last year. So that's going to be a fun show. Make sure you tune into that. Make sure you follow me, of course, Finkelstein Ryan, if I didn't already mention that. Follow the show at Locked On Mets, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you tomorrow.